Is it funny for men to talk about shame? Like maybe a little bit our society says that's weird or that's soft or that's woo-woo. And in my experience, we all experience shame in a very real way, and it's an attack on our identity.
I think that there's continuous work to be done as a man and as a person in general for anyone. But you want to lead your husband, you want to lead your family. Do I know who I am? Do I know what I want? And am I working towards what I want?
It's really important that you can look at your life and your journey and your leadership with a lot of grace and give yourself space. And again, a lot of times the world will say like, well, but then you're just soft and you're, weak. And it's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Welcome to the Everyday Leader Podcast. Leadership is a choice. Join me, Matt, and my co-hosts Drew and Tate each episode as we break down how to lead powerfully in your family, team, and organization. Hey, everyone, and welcome to the Everyday Leader Podcast. Drew and I are excited to be with you today, and we're going to talk a little bit about a direction that we feel really strongly about taking our podcast and a more intentional addressing of a specific audience. And so before we get into that, just know that if you don't happen to fall into the demographic we're about to talk about, it's okay. We're still glad you're here and you're welcome to continue to listen. We feel like it's powerful and we feel called to spend more of our attention and specific conversations and topics speaking to us, right? Or as Drew was just saying, and he'll talk a little bit more about this, the him of 5 years ago. And so as we reviewed even some of the info that YouTube has, like who's watching our YouTube channel, it was pretty fascinating. It was like 98% males and like 90 something percent of them were between the ages of 25 and 45 or something like that. So we feel really strongly that that is the demographic, the audience that we can relate to the most, that we can serve the most. And we want to talk a little bit about that today and why we feel so called to speak to and serve that group of people. So Drew, I loved what you were saying about, right, you feel really called to help you from 5 years ago. Tell us a little bit more about that and why that's so important to you.
Yeah, and before I do that, I just want to acknowledge what you said too. I think what we talk about on this podcast, we want, if it will help someone in your life, we want we want you to share this with those it'll help and serve. And if they don't fit that demographic, it's okay. Like we're going to get into topics about family or business that can serve honestly a lot of different groups. And but to your point, Matt, like I think we've both felt this, and I think we've kind of been doing it naturally in our podcast, and we want to be more clear to make it easier for those we want to serve to find us. But yeah, you mentioned how we were talking before that we started recording that I've really leaned into this idea that I want to help the me from 5 or 10 years ago. Okay, so what is that? And if you followed the journey and you followed the podcast up to this point, you know a little bit about my background and my history and going from leading sales teams and having success in that to doing really well there, losing weight, overcoming family scares and tragedies and working on myself. But the best way I could summarize it is if I looked back 5 or 10 years ago and was really honest about the word I would describe myself, it would actually be miserable. And it's not fun to say that out loud. It's not fun to even admit that. Like my life is, I'm very blessed. And my life was very good despite feeling miserable at times. And I feel a greater calling to, okay, if I could go back 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, what would be the advice I'd be giving myself? What would be the things I would say that would create the most impact, maybe give the most shortcuts, maybe change my perspective or the way I view things. And I'm very grateful for the journey I've been on. I think it's all been the way it's supposed to be. And if someone else is in those same shoes or feels that same way, it's like, that's who I feel like I can help and who I can serve. And I know a little of your story too, Matt. I don't know if you'd use that same word to describe yourself previously, but I think there's a little bit of that, some of that for you as well. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
putting that on you, but
Oh,
to
yeah,
turn the mirror back to you.
yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I don't know that I would use that word specifically to describe me 5 years ago. I do feel like there was a lot of unknowns, a lot of pressure, a lot of unnecessary suffering that I was experiencing that now I experience less of because of the work that I've done and the perspective I strive to keep. And I actually remember though, let's see, when was it? Would have been in like 2022, I think. Yeah, 2022. I went to I went for a walk outside our house in Pima, and I sat down on like the transformer that was at the end of our road, the electrical transformer that was at the end of the line. And I was just thinking, praying, kind of talking with God. And there was a full moon that night. And I don't know, it was just a cool moment. I remember praying and just listening. And what came to me that night was two words, and they were drive on. That's just like what came to me as I considered, like, what do I do? I feel stuck. I feel like I've made dumb decisions on business and finance and not showing up powerfully in my family. And again, just a lot of this like angst, suffering, anxiety, pressure, not doing enough, not really good enough, want to do better, all of that. And when we were in Arizona for Christmas, I went and walked down to that same transformer, and it was just interesting for me to consider. Like I sat in the same place and looked the same direction, and for me to just consider how different I feel, how different my life is 3 years later, 3.5 years later. And yeah, if I could go back and tell myself that night what I know now or what I've experienced now, what I've created now, that would have been, that would have been amazing. And so to your point, Drew, if I can help other people, other men who are feeling a similar way to know like, hey, it's everything's okay. You're 100% responsible. You're the problem and you're the solution. And it's not secrets. It's not magic. It's not short, right? It's just like there's principles that you can latch onto that are true and useful that can help you reframe and reshape the way you think and the way you live, the way you lead. And there's hope, and that's really important to me. So yeah, we feel really strongly that we want to focus on that group.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that context, Matt. I think, well, as I kind of think about this idea and where we want to go, like we're going to probably spend more conversations just us this year. We want to be more intentional about the guests we bring on. Do they have a message and a mission that can help husbands and fathers that are in the thick of business and family and all of those things? And once again, I think the principles of leadership, for example, can help anyone anywhere. Like the principles of our faith and of Jesus Christ can help anyone anywhere. And we want to talk more about those more openly and boldly as well. And so, yes, to those of you who've listened, if you aren't in that demographic, probably our moms at least,
Yeah.
we want you to keep listening. And I, once again, I believe the things we share can help a lot of different people. But if we had to pick who we're going out to help, it's those husbands and fathers that are around you and I, Matt, every day, and Tate as well, in the middle of life and business and all that goes on. And so, yeah, I think it's, for me, if I summed up what has helped me, there have been, I mean, you just mentioned 4 or 5 different topics that are like life-changing principles when you actually apply them. But if we go back to the theme of our podcast, I believe a lot of it has been leadership. I believe a lot of it for me was realizing there's a lot of things you've got to work on you before you can work on the family, or before you can work on not maybe not before, but if you want to improve your family, if you want to improve business, that you have to prioritize or need to choose to prioritize to get where you want to go. And so I've seen as I have worked on me how much it's impacted every area of my life and made it better. And I feel like I've had to lead myself. And there was a lot of times during that period where I wasn't leading myself, where I didn't keep my word to myself. I wasn't with integrity with myself. I didn't believe strongly in myself. I prioritized what wasn't important, which I think often led to that feeling of misery at times. And once again, misery is a really strong word. It's not like I was living a life of depression. It was just a lot of unfulfillment, which seems kind of funny too. Like, if you believe in God and Jesus Christ, it's like, well, shouldn't you be fulfilled if you believe that and you're practicing that? And most of my life was, but I do recognize there were areas and things and limitations in myself that just created unhappiness. And so it's like, yeah, how can we help more men do that? So, or find that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing that spot on, right? Like self-leadership, we talk a lot about how leadership is a choice. And that's just so foundational, right? This idea that you're 100% responsible. I'm 100% responsible for everything in my life. And I have a choice in what I create, how I respond to circumstances that are completely outside of my control. And that is so, so foundational. And one of the things that's so important, because if we're not careful, especially like in our society, there's a lot of like just grind and hustle, and nothing wrong with either of those things either, except that oftentimes we've found that those just result in more unfulfillment and unhappiness because we're focused on something that's very like outcome external. And
Yeah.
so one of the like just blanket things that as we talk, as we share, and as you go on the journey of self-leadership, it's really important that you can look at your life and your journey and your leadership with a lot of grace and give yourself space. And again, a lot of times the world will say like, well, but then you're just soft and you're, weak. And it's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if we're not careful and intentional around giving ourselves grace and space, then we will fall into the identity trap that is set for us, which is tying our behavior or our outcomes or lack of outcomes to who we are. And that's what really keeps us down in the dumps. That's what really keeps us stuck. That's what really keeps us miserable, to use your word, Drew. So I want to encourage all of you to remember that as you go on the journey of self-leadership, it's really important that you give yourself grace and you approach the whole thing with a lot of curiosity and being curious why you responded a certain way in the past, or curious why you were miserable in the past, instead of saying, I can't believe I'm this, and attaching it to your identity. Identity
Yeah.
is so, so important. And again, it's like, is it funny for men to talk about shame? Like maybe a little bit. Our society says that's weird, or that's soft, or that's woo woo. And in my experience, we all experience shame in a very real way, and it's an attack on our identity. And so that's why it's important for us to be aware of the presence of shame and its effect in our life, because shame says you and your identity is not enough, is wrong, is bad, is irreparable, is a mistake, is broken. And if we believe that, or we are willing to latch onto that as our identity, that's tough. And
Yeah.
it makes it extremely challenging to start to make progress. And so, yeah, we'll talk a lot about the work that we can do on seeing ourselves more powerfully and understanding who we really are.
If I had to define a problem I see around all of this, Matt, I feel like, and I say this and recognize it's not just this, but I believe men have been under attack for a long time. Like family has been under attack, womanhood is like, all these things have been under attack, but the idea of being a masculine man or leading your home or leading your family, I feel like has been under attack for a long time. I mean, this will be, I think, the episode that airs after this, but did a episode with Thomas Fanner, and we were just talking about, and you'll hear this in the episode when it releases, but talking about how like how many sitcoms make dad the butt of all jokes, right? Like the house can't operate without mom. And like to that point, my house wouldn't operate the same way without my wife. Like I acknowledge that 100%. And at the same time, there shouldn't be shame around leading your family. There shouldn't be shame about being masculine. I do not like the word toxic masculinity. I feel like it's made the word in general like toxic, when true masculinity is just a characteristic of being a man, of being a boy. And the true essence of that, I think, is a good thing. And you talked about shame and emotions. I think one thing our generation probably can see is that the generations before us, men didn't talk about what they felt or their emotions. And when you bottle that up too long, things happen, you blow up, and and you don't lead in a powerful way. And it was really interesting. I've shared some experiences with my son the last month or two about him losing control of his emotions. It was really cool. He had another dentist trip and it did not go well, and I was not there. And he came home and they couldn't finish filling his cavities because he had the first shot. It hurt. They needed to give him a second. And he wouldn't let him do it. But he came home and said to me, "Dad, I lost control of my emotions." I was like, wow. Like, I don't think I recognized my emotions controlling me till the last few years. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm like, the fact that he can already sense, like, because we've talked about it a lot, that I'm reacting versus choosing, like, and that he recognized that, and to be able to tell him, hey, it's okay, you're still a good kid, like it happened, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Not connected to your identity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's powerful though. Like these are powerful things to believe, and a lot of times we grow up. Once again, this isn't to blame my parents or blame my family, but grow up where some of these ideas I was never discussed or talked about. Not because they it just that's a societal thing almost. Not even anything for any other reason. So, anyways, I'm starting to ramble, Matt. But
No, you're good. I love that story. It's a beautiful thing, like, and a great testament to the work that you're doing with Liam. So yeah, I just more and more, the more, I mean, from retreats, I've talked to many men at retreats or met them at these types of events or experiences in my coaching and consulting, right? You get into things with people and understand what they struggle with and what they're holding on to, and it's, I mean, pervasive is the word. Like, that's what shame is. It's tricky, it's sticky, it can be very pervasive. And so yesterday I was on a call with someone between 25 and 30, has a couple kids, young dad, by all accounts successful in a career, right? Got an MBA, good career. And yet he's saying to me, like, I have no confidence. And I don't feel like I show up as a powerful leader in my family and at work. And when we start to look at that, it's like, well, there's this thing that happened 10 years ago. And it's like, okay, well, what if you had to articulate that? And it's like, I'm a failure. I'm a disappointment. Right. And so that's heavy, and we all carry stuff like that. And so if you think about someone who is carrying around this belief that they're a failure and a disappointment for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, how that can shape your life experience and how you show up and what you see. And so it's a really beautiful work. It's a really beautiful thing to go through and to understand that is not true about me. And I'm going to begin to articulate what is true about me and then find evidence of that and choose to believe something that's true and powerful. And so about myself. And that can really help to start to dispel that shame
Yeah.
and get us out of that hole. And and again, when this is kind of laced with grace and you have a choice, it's a beautiful like progress and journey of choosing to believe things that are true and choosing to embrace more of who you are and going out into the world and creating what you want. And it's not perfect.
Right.
I don't talk about like, yeah, I used to have that. No, I still listen to that voice. I still believe those things that aren't true on a daily basis. And that's part of the work to continue to replace that, to continue to recognize that it's not true and to have a mechanism to do that is really helpful. And yeah, just so that everyone knows, it's not like, oh yeah, I used to believe things that aren't true and I don't anymore. It's like, no, I still do plenty. And experience those real emotions that come when I do believe things that aren't true.
And I might call those a flare up, right? Like
Yeah,
the flare ups of your past will still come, or the flare ups of the work you still have to do are still there. And I would love to say you and I, Matt, have made it and we're done, and we are very much on the path and working on ourselves continually and finding things to work on. As you talked about that person you worked with yesterday, I just thought of a client I worked with this last year too. Uh, that that same thing. Confidence is what he felt like I don't have, and I think that's probably a theme too for men. It's like they aren't confident in the way they're doing their business or their job or leading their family or their children, and he, through the work we did, he summed things up very simply for me. And part of that was through the work we were doing and some of the realizations he had, but he made the comment like, I think the reason I've lost my confidence is I've forgotten who I am, and haven't known what I wanted. And
nice.
so it was interesting as we worked through that. Who are you? And removing, limiting beliefs and judgments and shame, and then getting clear on, this is what I actually want to be doing right now at this time in my life. Maybe not forever. Like he might choose something else at some point, but he said like just those two things alone created a ton of confidence for him. And that seems, and that's easy to say. It's really simple to say, well, just get clear on who you are and what you want, and
Yeah,
your
that's a work.
confidence will be back. And you're going to be a great leader and dad if you just, sit down this week and just write down who you are and what you want, and everything's going to be better. So it's simple in practice, and it's work. I think that is there's a uh, there's continuous work to be done, um, as a man and as a person in general, any for anyone. But you want to lead your husband, you want to lead your family. Do I know who I am? Do I know what I want? And am I working towards what I want? Because when those things line up, it brings in that confidence. It brings in purpose. So
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
thought as you were sharing that.
Well, we've talked about those two things on this podcast many times, right? Who you are and what you want, like through the lens of who you are and what you want. And again, that's a big deal. That's a work. That's not, spend 30 minutes writing some stuff down. And that can be a great start. Um, and there's a work to be done to understand who am I really and what do I really want to create or to accomplish or to produce.
Hey,
So
and maybe like we don't have time to like walk someone through that on this episode today. Like, how do you do that?
keep listening.
It's good. Yeah. Well, keep listening. And like, here's a simple one you can go out and find on the internet that would help you do that. Like the Ikigai.
Yeah.
I don't know how to spell that. Ikigai has you ask a series of questions to like get clear on those things. Like there's probably 100 different people that could teach you a different format of that. And if you look for it, like you could find some practical ways to, okay, how do I start doing that for myself? Um, how do I get clear on who I am and what I want? So anyways, Ikigai is also referenced in the episode that's coming out next week. So I'm like, maybe if I just say it more than once and people know what it is, but
Yeah. No, that's awesome. There's a reason why our logo is a mountain and it has a little peak and a bigger peak and it has a down slope because that's life and that's leadership is that it's a journey, it's a climb.
if you're watching the video, I'll hold the logo up against the screen on
Yeah,
my shirt.
yeah. The the joy and fulfillment is in the journey and the climb, the ups and the downs, the keep going. And that's right. What you're saying, Drew, is that you were at the top of your game, the top of your company, the top of the sales world, and missing fulfillment and feeling
Yeah.
miserable. And the last several years for you, I know, have been not consistent, not steady, maybe at times. And you're on this journey where sometimes you feel like you're going down, sliding down, and other times you're climbing back up. And yet there's the joy, there's the fulfillment as you keep climbing.
Mhm.
So that's that's important to remember. It's important perspective for all of us to maintain, is that it's not linear. Leadership and growth is not linear.
Let me say something on that too, Matt, because my journey has changed significantly. The path I was on professionally is changed significantly. I think I don't think you have to necessarily quit your job and become a monk and live up in the mountains either. Like it could simply be, hey, I'm going to choose to take who I am and the reason behind it and choose to where I'm at make that something. So I think sometimes I don't know if danger is the right word, Matt, but there's this in the entrepreneur world, because I think a lot of the people who listen to this are also entrepreneurs, business owners, or maybe aspiring to do that, aspiring to be that. And there's this like, you've got to quit your day job to go find happiness. And I don't think that's always true. I think sometimes it is. I think for some, it's like, I was just talking with another man last night that like my job is literally just a paycheck, and I finally feel like I have the path out of that. And as soon as this path is in a position I can walk away, I'm walking away. And sometimes that's going to happen. I also think there's a version of me that could have chosen to be happy and find fulfillment where I was at. And I didn't choose that, and that's okay. And so I don't think it is necessarily, I think sometimes there's a drastic change that has to be made in your life to see drastic results. Like if you can't do things the same way and expect you to feel different about your life, right? You have to change something. And sometimes that change could just be an internal change. It doesn't have to necessarily mean like, all right, I'm walking away from the thing that provides for my family and and it could be. And I don't think it has to be that.
Yeah.
Because back to that hustle and grind culture, I think there's sometimes this like this, well, if you really care about your family, you're going to walk away from the day job to follow the meaning, the meaning and the being of who you are. I don't think it always is that. So
Yeah, for sure. Remember, you always have a choice. That's the key. It's like, and again, the more clear you are on who you are and what you want, the more clear the choices become that create that for you. And we, I did a keynote speech on Monday with a group, and the theme was elevate. And again, thinking of like our logo and this in general, when you think of elevate, you think of just like climb, reach to the top. And as I researched the word elevate, I found that there's actually some root meanings that have to do with like a light weight or a lighter weight. And that was really fascinating to me because it aligns with, again, something we've talked about on this show when it comes to our identity, is that it's less about changing yourself into someone you are not right now and more removing the resistance and the limitation you have to who you actually have always been. And so we use that analogy with like when you're climbing and you have a pack, sometimes you have a lot of unnecessary weight in it that's making the journey way more challenging. And so I hope that that is also helpful to you as you think about your self leadership, is that it's less about you need to be different than who you are now. And it's actually like the work is to remove the untruths and the limitations and the weight of who you aren't that you're holding on to, and just be more of who you've always been and who you were created to be. And that helps you continue on the journey in a more effective way.
yeah, and sometimes I think that's also saying no to more things and not yes. I think there's times in my life where saying yes
Yeah,
has been
pile
very
it on the
powerful.
pack, and it's like,
Yeah,
no,
let's add
uh,
one more thing because I'm in a position or a journey of growth. And I've also noticed like, hey, sometimes it's okay to say no. Like I love we've talked about this book before, but I love Finished, Give Yourself the Gift of Done, talks about why we don't finish the goals and the things that we're going after. And he talks about how sometimes it's okay to just bomb in certain areas of your life. Like choose to bomb at Netflix. Like I'm just not going to stay caught up on all the shows my friends are watching, and that's okay. I'm going to be left out of those conversations, I guess. Or I've chose to bomb on sports the last couple months. Like, I really love watching sports, and I've watched almost none the last few months just because I'm in a season of, you know what, that's, as much as I love that, it's just not a priority and important to me. There have
It's
been
just because
seasons of, go
it's
ahead.
just because Notre Dame got left out of the college football
That,
playoff.
yeah, that's bring up some emotion I need to work through. Um, and there's been seasons of like, you know what, I'm going to choose to bomb on my backyard. Like, it's not making me happy to do the grass, and the kids aren't playing outside these last couple months anyway. So the yard's going to go, and we'll hire a guy to get it back up, or I'll jump into that when the season of that I'm in and the busyness I have in life frees up, and it's okay. Like, no one
Yeah.
sees my backyard. No one's thinking maybe someone does. Maybe you're listening thinking, man, a dad needs to mow his grass, but
Well, I
but
judged you a little bit when I came to your house and saw it. I was judging you. No, just kidding.
and I think there's times to say no. I think there's times where it's like, I'm just going to choose to bomb this area of my life and let it go because it's not what's important. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. This has
Great.
been really good. Thanks for being a part of our journey and listening. And we're excited to continue on with our climb and our journey with a more focused intention and attention on helping the us of 5 years ago and continuing to help men realize that who you are and your identity is crucial, and that connection with yourself, with a higher power, and with other guys is so important. And we are engaged in our direct businesses, helping people with that. We are engaged in other ventures that provide opportunities for men to work on who they are and understand who they are and connect with other men. And we're going to freely share what those opportunities are. We don't have anything to push on you, and we have lots of cool opportunities to provide to people who want to get serious about their journey, their identity, and their growth and progress.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thanks, Matt. This has been fun. And to our listener, today's the day.
Thanks for joining us on the Everyday Leader podcast. If you're ready to take your leadership journey even further, subscribe to our weekly newsletter for more insights and practical tips. And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram to stay a part of our growing community. Just follow the links in the show notes. If this episode impacted you, please help us spread the word and share the link with a friend from wherever you're listening.